Good evening, everyone. Good evening. I think we're going to get started. Hello. Oh, lots of friends. Well, everyone in the audience is patiently wearing masks as we do here at the Parrish. But we see a lot of people we know, even with the masks on. Delighted to be here this evening for a continuation of now in-house programs for our Friday Nights Live. Year-round support from the Bank of America, also including the additional support of the Corcoran Group, and of course Sandy and Steve Pearlbine. They're such long-standing supporters of all we do and this evening as well. It's my pleasure to welcome Michelle Stuart. I did not introduce myself because I think everyone here knows, but for those of you I know, quite a few people are tuning in on YouTube. I'm Alicia Longwell. I'm the chief curator. Okay, no, you're all right. Here at the museum, and I'm delighted to have been able to work on an exhibition, a little bit under the radar, over the course of the last year when things were very quiet in the art world, very quiet in a lot of the world, but an exhibition titled Affinities for Abstraction, Women Artists on Eastern Long Island, 1950 to 2020. And I'm delighted tonight to welcome one of the most terrific painters in that group, and that is Michelle Stuart.
I'm delighted to be here.
Painters and
the show is beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It means the world to me when an artist in a show says the show is beautiful, and I happen to know from Michelle, whom I've known probably about 35 years, she wouldn't say that if she didn't think so.
No, I wouldn't.
Yeah, you're right. When I asked you to join me tonight in a conversation, you said, what will we talk about? And I reminded you that over a course of very, very many years, we haven't really ever had trouble talking to each other. Have we?
I don't think so.
Far-ranging topics. I'd like to stick to Michelle herself tonight and her work, but we'll probably go off topic, so just stay with us in that moment. I will say it's been a thrill.
And if we run out of steam, they can ask questions.
Well, that is indeed true. The audience out there in the cyberspace will not be asking, but everyone in the room, you have to be their interlocutor. So if you have a question that you think half the world needs to know, you present it to us, even if you know Michelle a lot better than that. I think we'll start with, tell a little bit, you're at a very important moment in your career and life, and what went on during the pandemic in the sense, we're going to start with the trailer, the film.
Okay.
We're going to watch a trailer from a documentary that is being worked on.
Yes, absolutely.
It's well underway.
Well underway.
And just tell us just briefly how
it's
that's
a lot.
been.
It's a pain in the ass.
Oh, okay. It's by an extraordinary team of producers.
I like the people involved very much.
Okay.
Yes, very much. The producer is Karen Shapiro, who did the Eva Hesse film. The director is Karen Ballone, and she has done a lot of other films. So they're good to work with. Right. But I never realized what people went through. Seriously, I never realized what they have to do to set up, which is beyond belief, I think. I mean, the
lighting.
All the lighting and the screens and the cameras, and they shoot with 2 cameras because they want black and white, and they want color, or they want 35 millimeter, or they want less than whatever, because they're doing it in different.
And you've probably gone through a lot of your archives to get the material.
I didn't, but my archivist did.
Okay, good. Even better. All right.
What I did was they came in for a couple of weeks and took over my life.
Mm-hmm.
And then they set up cameras in my studio, and I said, you're going to find me, getting up in the middle of the night with nothing on. So that's what they did. They had cameras. It was like, I got used to it after a while.
Yeah. Well, I can say, and I think
really,
all of us can say, we feel your pain, but we're very, very grateful they're doing it.
We're going to show
now we're going to show a clip from a trailer that they've done. I think it's a superb introduction to you.
The trailer was done because that's how the producer gets money from people.
Yes, yeah. I hear you. All right.
Well, I mean, otherwise they wouldn't do a trailer, would they?
No, but that's the way the world goes around. So, Victor, if you'll start that, it's only about 9 minutes, but it's a great intro.
Waves, the sea, voyage. I've never been seasick. I roll with it. It's just like I was part of the boat. I was actually developed in Sydney, in my mother's womb, and she traveled across the sea.
A boat with the prow of a dragon appeared for the silent man of the south, and he stopped dreaming and became a seeker. He traveled throughout the world looking for the meaning of this spiral constellation. He found only questions about the knowledge of eternal life, but he found them everywhere.
Ah, Captain Cook. Darwin. I'm really curious. I find the boat a beautiful metaphor for everything. The whole idea of the voyage is, to me, it's so important to humanity, really. Time, feel, image, dream. I like the structure of the grid and then to break it up with organic. The juxtaposition of the two. I mean, it's kind of life, isn't it? Little stories that waft through my brain. Unfinished vignettes. Some of them are pseudo-personal. They never existed, but they're personal stories. You build a film, you put a still life, a landscape to set the scene. That's how it goes through my head. What a pretty girl. You pretty dog? A lot of these photographic works are reflecting back on my work, a memory of things that transpired earlier. lucky. I had a lucky childhood. My father was so important in treating me like a human being. My father brought me books. He was the book person. It was about the words. It was about the language. She embraced art, and I think she was very progressive artistically, and she was gifted. She made all my clothes. She was a superb tailor. Both my parents told me stories. My father in particular, but both of them told me stories. He painted a very vivid picture of the war on a child. I don't know why he was telling a little girl. I guess he had to tell somebody. He was in the Second World War, and he wasn't the same person when he came back. Shadow, life, death, change, explore. The first thing I did when I graduated high school was split. I got a buddy of mine from high school, and we drove to El Paso, and then we drove straight down Mexico to Mexico City. That kind of love of Mexico came from mariachi music. I loved mariachi music. And those things, they put you in touch with a culture that you're not in touch with, and you're open to that culture. I actually wanted to go further, because I wanted to go see the archaeological sites. I like all the forms, particularly pre-Columbian, American. And I took a bus to the West Coast. I was 16. It was life-changing, really. Curious travel, voyage. I've always felt that my body and imagination work very well together. It's a very natural thing for me ever since I was a child. They're all rubbed with my hand. Rubbed and rubbed and rubbed and rubbed. I got a lot of exercise. I wanted with these scrolls to be an entryway for people to understand the marks that the earth gives. And you could feel the different histories that had transpired in that particular site. You had the feeling of time that's inherent in the place. Earth, source, history.
The idea mainly was one of flow, I guess, which is in my work anyway. A continuity, a continuum, and I felt that very strongly in the falls, so of course I related to it, and I feel it strongly in the river, too. I just fell in love with this river. It was just so beautiful, It's like a place of rites, It's a ritualistic spot, almost. Generally, the way I work is after I've had some kind of feeling about the site, the place, I use the rocks of the place to mark the paper first, and I usually beat them in by hand so that they they're impressed into the. That's why I use paper, actually, heavy rag paper. Does it look straight?
26. Straight as it ever looked when we were rolling it.
It will change a lot, and I like that. You know, as it rains, some of the earth moves down. Little bugs and things crawl over it, and rabbits play on it. That's good. I want to see that. I want to see all those changes. That's the way it is in nature, and that's why I like to see the piece just almost eventually disintegrate, you know, but in the meantime become very much part of the place.
Fabulous. All right, we're going to ask the producers right now to put us on the list to show that film. When it's completed, I wanted to show it because it gives such a fabulous introduction to Michelle's work. Many of you have known that work from the very beginning, but I think it gives.
Well, there's a lot of things that are in the piece that no one has seen, really. I mean, there's one in a small island in Finland, right, that no one, you know, maybe 100 people saw it at the time, but they were all Finns. And then I think one or two of them were in Sweden, you know, so Americans would not have seen them.
Right. The ones with the candles, I think that was a Swedish.
The one with the candles.
Well, that was in the film. But anyway, you know what, Victor, if we could bring
that
up
was in Finland.
Yeah. Oh, that was the Finland.
Yeah.
So I wanted just to start for a moment. This is the beautiful beeswax painting in the show, Passages Bream Bay. And this goes right back to I think you have a crush on Captain Cook.
I still do.
Okay.
I think Captain Cook is one of the great personages of the history of mankind.
Yes, you're an incurable romantic in that sense.
Well, no, I mean, he was a son of a poor dirt farmer in Yorkshire, Scotland border area, actually. And, you know, had big dreams and ended up being a major navigator, mariner who discovered New Zealand and Australia.
Well, Bream Bay
surveyed most of the South Pacific.
And Bream Bay is a tribute to him.
Yes,
since he
yes,
named
and
Bream Bay.
Actually, my antecedents had their early homestead in New Zealand in the 1850s was on Bream Bay.
Okay, so if Captain Hook hadn't discovered Bream Bay, you wouldn't be here, is that? Sort of, I think, sort of.
Well, I might be here, but I'd be a Brit.
But this is cropped up in a lot of your work, and I love the idea of voyage. I mean, if, you know, Adam and Eve hadn't left the Garden of Eden, where would we be? If we hadn't, you know, if he hadn't sailed across the seas, and that voyage was what, 1789?
Well, what, 69.
69.
Until 79.
Yeah.
One of the things about Captain Cook that was extraordinary as well, I may add, is that he took artists on the trips.
Okay.
Which was exceedingly unusual. He took painters, and he collected artifacts, and he kept a double log, and his log discussed the people that he met in the islands in the Pacific.
Right. And that first voyage was to actually, he wanted to.
Well, they sent him. They sent him.
He was the royal.
Trace the transit of Venus.
That tracing the transit of Venus is what interested me, because you, some millennial later, went on your own voyage.
Oh, yeah.
Next. To off the South Carolina coast. I'm assuming the coordinates were so you could see the eclipse in 28.
Well, it was Carrie's, wherever she is birthday.
Oh, there she is.
So yes, fortunately I was on the yacht that
Yeah.
was the birthday party.
But that was
And it was meant to be. It was, the 21st, and it was the great event
viewing point though,
Yeah.
for the eclipse.
for photographing. Yeah.
For across the U.S.
It's difficult to photograph.
Yeah. But this is a piece that you
Yeah.
did for that. Okay, next. Now this is a photograph of Art Park, 1975. I think you saw beautiful pictures of that in.
Yeah, enough of that.
We're ready. We're
Done
ready to
that.
go on. rubbing. Now something like this fantastic installation, you didn't go back and reclaim that paper, I assume.
What happened
The
was
scroll,
the
yeah.
whole theory of Art Park, to be brief, was that no one was supposed to keep their piece, which I thought was a great idea. I went along with it completely. It was a Smithsonian idea that they had taken, and they said that we want to follow these dictates that of entropy, etc. So what happened with my piece was that a big wind came along about 3 weeks after I'd made the piece.
Oh, really?
And took most of it with it, because it was in a, there was the Niagara River was right here. That's Niagara River.
Right.
And it was between Canada and the United States. And of course, there were huge wind gusts that were going through there. And I got a few pieces of it.
So you're often spoken of as an artist, a woman in the land art movement. Do you feel that's a place?
Sure, a lot of them were land art, but they weren't monuments that were going to be in place forever. They were all of them were transitory.
Right.
I mean, 1 or 2 of them still exist as if they were almost like remnants.
Okay.
Yeah. There's one in Oregon that was I don't know if you have a photograph of it or not, the Stolz's piece. And, that was 1979, and I didn't do it to keep it. I didn't buy the property, and the property went down through time, and it stayed for a while, and then kids started using the rocks. I mean, that's what happens.
Yeah.
And it's okay.
Let's see the next slide.
That's not it.
No, I know it's not. But sometimes scrolls were done specifically to be seen, exhibited.
Yeah, the
in-
scrolls are different.
Yeah.
And the scrolls still have held up beautifully, actually.
Okay, next.
Even though they're on paper.
Now, this is this beautiful.
Yeah, the San Francisco Museum bought that 2 years ago.
Smart. Let's hear it for the San Francisco Museum.
What?
Fabulous piece.
Yeah, I love this piece. I do. I
That
love
was
this
here in
piece.
our exhibition that we collaborated on of your work.
This wasn't.
Not later, but some like this. I was fascinated when you were talking about photography and the use of photography in your work. I know the first time I visited your loft, I noticed the wonderful collection of photography that you have, which you've done over the years.
I haven't done it of late, or even for a long time, because it got too expensive. When I bought my early photographs of like 19th century,
Muybridge.
no, I never bought Muybridge. I didn't.
Excuse me.
No, I bought things that I could get for $10 or $15.
Okay.
Yeah, and So I have Fenton. I have a couple of, Crimean War Fentons,
Right.
and I have Bourne. I have some beautiful photographs.
You do.
And I put them up occasionally and keep them in portfolios, closed up
That's
too.
smart.
Yeah, I love them.
So the photographs are obviously in a grid pattern. That you,
Oh, these?
Yeah.
Yes. Well,
and these-
those are, a lot of them are mine, but some of them are pilfered,
sourced.
sourced. Yeah.
It's the term we use.
Depends how you want to look at it, I guess.
Right.
But I'm careful about what I pilfer.
You have to be, yes. But I was, in the film when you were talking about this stitching together and bringing things together, it sounded very filmic in a way, the way stills
I
come
kind of
together.
think of them as films in a way. I mean, I don't specifically think of them as films, but they are filmic, and there is something in my brain that wants them to be
Narrative.
to be engaged with them in a sense that is similar to a film,
Right.
because you wander through time and space with them.
Right.
Only it's not in a consecutive way.
Right.
It's in a non-consecutive
Yeah.
way.
I mean, I find myself sometimes, and there are other pieces like this with the grid of images. One almost tries to supply a narrative or think about one, but then there's that slippage that you talk about.
Well, we all have narratives that we want to give things anyway,
well-
and it's different with different people.
Right.
And, if I present something, it isn't presented with, you have to think the same way I think.
Right.
You can just go in there and play.
That does get one into trouble in life when you want other people to think like you think. At least I found that to be true. But tell about I don't want to say artifacts, objects.
Oh, the
table.
artifacts relate to
Right.
the piece on, the photograph,
Right,
obviously.
Right.
It's all about time.
Mhm.
This particular one is, it's some of them are fragments of the sea.
Mhm.
And some of them are
But these are things you tend to collect.
fossils.
Yeah. That you have collected over time.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see the next slide, Victor. Thank
But
you.
I want to say
I'm
something
sorry.
more about this last piece.
Sorry.
In this last piece, there is an object which I didn't find myself. It was a gift from somebody in Canada years ago. Her great-grandfather found it on the beach. I had a little trouble getting it into the country, but I did get it in. Well, I did. And in the show at Long, the wildlife arrived with guns and
Really?
camouflage and said that they were taking it
When was this?
and took it.
How recently? This didn't make the front page of the Times.
2017. Well,
Wow.
Long didn't want to really make a big issue
Well, I
out of it.
suppose not.
I agree with you. I was so upset by what they did. I thought it was so outrageous.
Yeah.
Obviously, this thing was like, it was all dried up and, over 100 years old. And
Well, someone tipped them off,
Yeah.
obviously. Okay, well, I guess that's how it is now in the art world, but I never heard that story at all.
we have now.
That's a good one.
I mean, it cost them a lawyer and a lot of tourists, as they say. They were not happy.
All right. Beautiful scrolls.
Yeah, that is at Glenstone now.
That's great too.
Yeah. They haven't put it up yet, but that's where it is.
Okay.
And they bought it.
Did everyone hear that? It's the Glenstone, the fantastic.
Have you been there?
Well, I have not.
I have not either.
Say. Well, let's go. Seriously.
Okay.
Carrie? You this is wonderful. I haven't only shown slides of work of Michelle's that's been placed in major collections and museums, but
Keep going.
it's been a good run.
No, I'm
No,
very
I did
pleased
want- there
about
was-
that.
no,
Yeah.
You should be. This is the Serpent Mound. You told me an interesting story, a couple of, who knows how long ago or at what point. Speaking about the show and speaking about women, being a woman in the art world, I remember a couple of weeks ago, and over time speaking with Dorothea Rockburn, whose response to, was it difficult to be a woman in the art world? Was it hard to, was your work recognized? She said, well, it wasn't difficult. It just didn't, we were just invisible in a way, she felt. That term. And you told a very interesting story about yourself and being asked to speak. Do you want to? I want you to lead it.
Oh, for an honorarium.
Yes.
Oh God, that's a yeah. Well, that was.
But it leads into an interesting
no,
point
it
about
was,
archaeology.
I think in the 70s or the early 80s,
okay.
and I was invited to, give a slide talk, which meant the whole slide thing, and you would go, and it would take a couple of days, and you'd do your event. And when they asked me, they offered me a certain honorarium.
Right.
And it sounded like pittance to me. So I don't remember what it was. It was like maybe $300 or something like that. So, and that, didn't seem like very much. But, so I said to the person that was talking to me on the phone, I said, well, what did you pay your last speaker? And there was this absolute silence. And she said, oh, I'm not sure. I said, well, who was your last speaker? And it was a man, right? She said, well, I'll have to get back to you. And she said, well, we paid him $1,000. I said, well, that's what I want.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
And she told you?
And she said, I have to get back to you on that. And they got back to me on that. And then, the funny part was, not only did they get back to me and pay me that, but somebody who had been on their little gig, about 2 months before, lived in Soho, and called me up and said, do you know that they gave me an extra $800 because they said you got $1,000. I said, good.
Good for you.
Good.
But then you said, the other thing you did, when you traveled around the U.S. and went to other schools, and you also made it a condition of your trip that you would be taken to see.
Oh, I didn't make it a condition.
Oh,
no.
All right. But you did.
No, when I gave the talk, I would say to the audience that were mostly students,
Right.
If anyone feels like taking me to any of your nearby archaeological sites, I'd be delighted to go with you. And I got to see so many archaeological sites in the United States that it was a fantastic thing. And Canada.
Yeah. Because Serpent Mound is in.
Serpent Mound was one of them, yeah. I later went back to Serpent Mound. I saw almost every main archaeological monument, I hate to call them that, but that's what, in Ohio, yes, because of that. And in the South as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Alabama.
Alabama, Georgia.
The notebook. I know you've made notebooks
Notebook.
of your work. Okay, next slide. It's a bigger
I
piece,
actually
Mason
think
Bears.
the San Francisco Museum bought that one too.
All right.
No,
well,
oh,
let's-
the Hirshhorn just bought this one. I haven't even been paid for that one. That one's hot off the presses.
Well, I mean,
But I love that this one got sold to a major museum. Because they'll take
Not right.
care of it.
exactly.
Yeah.
You have to write up you have to tell everything that's in there, right? For the conservators.
I made a deal with them on the photographs.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Well, I have a copy of the photographs. I mean, they wanted the original negative,
Oh,
and I gave it to them.
yeah.
But I got a copy if I wanted them.
Well, you should.
Yeah.
All right, next picture. Thank you.
You know, the Hirshhorn is very complicated because the Hirshhorn is government.
Exactly.
Yes, the contract is.
Is it?
Well, I'm joking, but it's long and complicated.
I don't know.
You want to know where that one is?
Yeah.
France,
What part of France?
the museum in Paris.
Oh, great. Do they fly you over?
No, but they were a pain in the ass.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Well, it was in Venice in the Biennale,
Right. Corinne, did you see
and they
this
made
piece
me
there?
reprint all the photographs.
Because, I mean,
I don't know.
the
They thought they
photographs-
got too much light,
exposed. Well,
but I
that's
did
very thorough of the French.
very. Yeah.
And it will be there for long after every other country is
I don't
gone.
know. The
feel
Pompidou's
French-
closed for 3 years. I'd probably be dead by the time they put it up. I mean,
All right, next slide before we really trash our
seriously.
international relations here. Thank you. You got one more to look at here.
Oh, that's a deer.
Okay,
Yeah.
beautiful. Beautiful installation at
It's still up, actually, I think.
in
Beacon.
Beacon. In Beacon, if you've been to Beacon, there's beautiful pieces there, right? Claiming
If anybody hasn't been to Beacon,
you must go.
it's worth going to Beacon.
Yeah,
It's wonderful.
definitely.
It's really amazing what they've done up
Yeah.
there.
Well, a new director is basically, I won't say rewriting the history according to Dia, but it was largely populated by work of men, except for the possible exception of the big spider, which used to always be in the basement of the attic, as I recall. God bless Louis Bourgeois. But now...
And Truett.
Oh, now Anne
Yeah,
Truett
yeah,
and Agnes Martin, but now
Yeah.
they're and Dorothea
think.
Rockburn.
Right.
But this is a gorgeous piece, which has been there.
Been there for five or
Beautiful.
6 years.
All right, next picture.
Yeah.
You also, much of what you obviously is talking about nature. And the
I love
environment.
this piece.
I know.
And nobody saw this piece.
I know. Tell us a little bit about Ashes in Arcadia.
I had a show at the Rose Art Museum, which hardly anyone goes to anyway. Well, it's true
Well.
because it's not a major museum and it's a good museum, but it's offbeat. It's in Waltham, Massachusetts, and it had an incredible curator named Susan Stoops for some years, and she brought up really good people
She did.
and a lot of women. She did
Exactly.
a beautiful show of women artists. I mean, really extraordinary. I have the catalog. I went up there for it. But what she did a show of mine, of I think it was 8 or 10 paintings that were from all over the United States. And they had an extra room in the museum that was not being used for anything. And it was a very large space. It was maybe 30 by 40. It was a big room.
Right.
And she said, if I look for a New England grant, will you do an installation in that room? Because I didn't have to do anything with the paintings. I mean, she just, you know. So I said, sure. And so I got the grant. She got the grant, or we got the grant. And I did this piece. And it was really the first strongly political piece that I had done. And it was, the whole room was this piece, but you could move into the room about the size of this table. You could walk in that far. And the soundtrack that was in the room behind some blinders, I guess we'd have to call them, was the call of the whale. This really haunting whale sound. So this was all full of ashes, and within the ashes were tools that I cast in sand. And, you know, like artifacts.
Right.
They were meant to be artifacts of kind of the end of mankind, right. And books that were tattered and dipped in wax. And the artifacts were also had wax markings on them. And then Fresnel lights were under the sand, the ashes, and cast very little but enough light on, and the whole walls, all the walls were units that were waxed with refuse forced into garbage, kind of, not organic, but
How long did it take you to create that?
I actually rarely use an assistant. I used an assistant with that, yeah. And a lot of people gave me their ashes, including the curator. It took a year maybe. Yeah. Yeah.
And that was, would you say, your first sort of political, environmental?
Was definitely.
Yeah.
But, you know, how many people saw it? And they were supposed to do, this still makes me angry, they were supposed to do a video. And I assumed they did it.
Oh, that's too bad.
And they didn't. So maybe they thought it was being done. You know, I don't want to blame them really. And maybe they gave it to a student to do. But when we tried to get in touch with them later, it didn't exist. So.
Well, it lives on. I didn't see it.
This is the only photo. It lives on in this photograph.
Well, that's true too.
And
but
some
people did see it, though. I mean, it has been
a few
written
people,
about.
but
You did it.
But I love this piece. I really.
Well, it's important. It's always talked about in your work.
There it is.
Oh, thank you. Yes, there. It's a beautiful.
It's hard to see in this photograph, but there it is. Yeah.
Yes, and those are.
What year is that?
81.
Yeah.
It's an absolutely extraordinary piece, and we're very happy to have it. Well, it's a fantastic piece, and thank you. We did.
I didn't hear a word she said.
Well, talking about giving it to the museum.
Oh.
And that we did frame it. Jackie saying you wrote book reviews for the Print Collector's newsletter.
Yes, and it was really difficult. I can't tell you how difficult it was. I loved doing it. But since I had no background in writing book reviews, I would go over it and over it and over it and over it. So that,
Jackie's a tough editor too. All right, Victor, next slide. We'll this.
Oh.
All right, we're going to jump shift now and talk a little bit. You mentioned you went out to the coast of Oregon. What? You recognize this?
I recognize the dog who's long gone.
Okay. You mentioned you went out to the coast of Oregon for a long time. It's a place too good. And then you did not ultimately have a second place there because it's a long trip. And that at that point,
well, that was one of the reasons. Yeah, I loved that place.
Decided to maybe look out on the East End.
Right.
And I know you'd had a whirlwind trip in 1953 for a weekend in Montauk. I read that somewhere.
Did you?
Yes, I did.
You know, I'm writing.
I won't go into
writing
the details.
a memoir.
Yes, good, because that sounds like a good
So-
weekend.
Actually, it's not a memoir at all. I call it that, but it's really not. I just trying to remember all the trips, and I kept little notebooks on the trips.
Yeah.
And I would refresh my memory by looking at the little notebooks, and then I found something very interesting that I could remember very well. Most of the trips, you know, just project. There was an article recently that somebody sent me in the New York Times about artists being able to project things in their brain visually or something.
Yes.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
It actually is true with actual places.
You visualize.
Yes, it's and once you're there, you start remembering your body in that space and what you were doing and how you related to that space, and then you see what's on the shelves and you see what's, you know, it's amazing.
Well, you artist folk are very visual. That's for
Hopefully.
Sure. You see a lot of things we don't. But, and this is your studio there. This is the, I compared it once to Julia Margaret Cameron's little glass house. You built a separate freestanding studio in Amagansett.
Right.
To your own proportions and directions.
Absolutely.
It has no fenestration on 3 sides.
Right.
And
It's
then
all
a
one.
window wall on to one. Yeah.
It has skylights.
Yeah, it has skylights there that you can see. You
And
built
it's all,
that in
it's white.
the 80s. Late 80s?
I don't remember.
Okay. Oh, there you are. Thank you. Late 90s, the archivist. It's a glorious space. And always, or at one point, was redolent of beeswax that you work with. Little burner.
Not anymore.
I know. That's probably good. All right, next, Victor. Oh, I wanted to show this other fabulous piece in
That
our
was
collection.
a series of butterflies I did way back. I can't remember when I did them.
Yeah.
Is that here?
Yes.
Oh, good.
Gave
Okay.
it to it. Yeah. Very beautiful. I remember one night at our house in Sag Harbor, a giant moth had come and landed. I mean, a giant moth. Very, very beautiful. Do you remember? I put it in a little box and brought it to you.
I probably still have it, if you did.
I don't know. You were a bit taken aback, but you do.
No,
it may be there. I thought it. Let me just say, I thought of you.
I did a
saw it.
photo piece of a place that I was in Australia, where when I opened the curtains at night, the window was full of moths. You know, so I mean, it's electrifying, really. You know, it's a magic.
Yeah. Well, this was just
Yeah.
there, and I thought of you.
Yeah.
I think we have maybe, how many more slides, Victor? Just next. We'll go to the next one. Games. It's another piece in our collection.
You have that?
We
My
do.
goodness.
We do. Right. So what we have is...
I was briefly into games.
Well, not still into baseball?
I still watch baseball.
Oh, okay.
I'm not as baseball fan as I used to be. I mean, I still watch baseball. I'm not as baseball fan as I used to be.
It's changed.
It's changed.
It has.
Maybe I've changed, but I think it's changed.
Maybe both.
And
but
I don't know why there was a certain period where the Yankees had these 4 great players, and it was like magic watching the games. You know, Derek Jeter and et al. And it was so great. And Gardner is still there. He's the only remnant of that great team. But I was watching him the other day. But it isn't magic anymore. Yeah.
all right, we'll end on this. I hope you've all been into the galleries. If you don't, we'll still be open after this. And there is Green Bay.
Yes,
Passage
right
is
there.
Green Bay. Yes, but in C2,
No,
so to speak, in the galleries.
Yeah. That beautiful show. Really beautiful show.
It's a thrill to be able to talk to you. I want to let our audience pose any questions, comments. Fun?
They're all stupefied.
I guess so. They're all.
Come on, you can't think of anything. That's all right, because I couldn't hear you.
There's one right there. When did you decide
Oh
to
my
be
God.
an artist?
When I was very, very young. Yeah, very young, actually. It's a good question, and I think a lot of people have very good answers for that when they're asked that. But I think it kind of, well, I was encouraged by my parents when I was very small, because I did drawings, and they brought me, you know, crayons and paper, like I guess a lot of parents do. But I slowly realized that I had a certain amount of interest in doing it a lot. And for years, it was a toss-up between thinking I maybe could write and thinking maybe I wanted to be a visual artist. And then I realized that I couldn't write. I wasn't very, really, you know. I was what? I was okay. But I was better at visual art, you know. And I loved it. You know, my mother would take me to the museum. We had a horrible museum in LA. I mean, it was a disaster. It was the LA County Museum, and the most forward thing they had was Albert Pinkham Ryder. Nothing more.
Not anymore. No.
One writer, and it was a good one. It was, luckily. And I remember loving that. And then I did see some kind of interesting shows that they brought to that museum later. Like they did Sacco and Vanzetti, Ben Shon's Sacco and Vanzetti, which was a very unusual political show, you know, at that time. I mean, whenever it was, late 40s or something. So I kept going back to the museum. There was nothing else but that museum. There was maybe one gallery. I think Pearls had one gallery there. Yeah. It was, you know, no man's land in terms of art. So I just wanted to get out. Actually, it worked. It worked because it got me out of LA.
Exactly.
What?
When did you leave Los Angeles?
This is Mary. Mary Heilman is asking, when did you leave LA?
1952.
Yeah.
What'd you say?
Yeah. Oh, and we didn't even hear about that time in Mexico City with working with Diego Rivera.
Right. Yeah.
That's next time. One more question.
Next time.
Let me just say, you photographed her project in Brooklyn.
I remember doing it.
Yes, and she says those photographs are incredible, and she's so
Good.
grateful. But you have
I'm
that.
so glad.
Yeah, yeah. Just saying, there's always new perspectives in your work.
Oh, good.
That's it.
That's an unusual.
I think that annoys some people, but obviously it doesn't annoy you. No, I think, I think people want to see you continue doing the same thing. And the fact that somebody
Yes.
every 10 years or so changes mediums or changes the way they are working or looking at the world, I think that it bothers some people. But I find that when I look at the whole stream of people that do that, you can see them in all the work, and you can see a certain kind of palimpsest of things that run through. It's not really a big jump, which I think people think it might be, but it's really a kind of river that flows, with.
Well, we're in on that river and can't wait to see the next thing that floats by. Thank you.
It's probably
Michelle.
me.
Thank you.
Thank you so